She was 4 years old. 11 days. Siberian wilderness. No shoes. No coat. No food. Temperatures dropping below freezing. Every single night. She should have been dead by morning too. But here's the part that was left out of every version you've probably seen. On day 2, rescue teams found something around her sleeping spot. Something that should have killed her in her sleep. And didn't. And when you understand why it didn't, you'll realize this wasn't just luck. It was something none of them could explain. Before you understand how this happened, you need to understand where. Yakutia, Russia's far northeast, nearly the size of India. The entire country could fit inside its borders with room to spare. Fewer than 1 million people live there. And in summer, for a few desperate weeks, the forest explodes into life. Grasses shoot up to extraordinary heights. Mosquitoes emerge in clouds so thick they physically darken the air. The taiga presses in from every direction, like a wall that breathes. In the Olyakminsky district, there are villages so remote that supply trucks reach them only a handful of times per year. Communities where children grow up understanding one thing in some deep, inherited way. The forest is not a playground. It's a boundary. Cross it without someone who knows what they're doing, and the forest does not give you back. Karina Chikatova was 4 years old, and on a hot July day in 2014, she crossed that boundary. Her father, Radayon, was leaving. Work in villages like this means travel. Days, sometimes weeks, deep into the surrounding wilderness. Ordinary, unremarkable, except to a 4-year-old girl who worshipped her father. Karina watched him pack, watched him gather his things, watched her dog, a young mixed-breed puppy, barely pass a stumbling stage, trot along behind him. Papa was leaving. The dog was going with him. She was being left behind. She followed, not loudly, small feet in summer sandals on the dusty path. Face set with that particular determination very young children carry when they have decided something. Absolutely. Her grandmother assumed she had gone with her father. Her father assumed she had stayed with her grandmother. 2 adults, 1 child. 2 completely opposite beliefs about where she was. By the time anyone compared notes, Karina was already gone. Not in the yard. Not at a neighbor's house. The forest had her. The search began within hours. Police, volunteers, emergency services, all converging on this tiny village, organized, urgent, controlled, the way people are when they're genuinely terrified but cannot afford to show it. On day 2, a tracking dog led a team of 4 searchers to a spot roughly 3 kilometers from the village, a shallow depression in the grass. Circular, pressed flat. The dog sat down beside it and refused to move. The lead tracker crouched low and went very quiet. It was a sleeping nest. Grass arranged in a rough circle. In the center, 2 distinct impressions. 1 small, unmistakably human. 1 larger, the size of a medium-built dog. They had slept here recently, but that wasn't what made the tracker go quiet. Around the outside of the nest, pressed into the soft mud, were other prints. Large, deep, 5-toed, with long claw marks gouged into the earth. Bare prints, fresh ones, from an animal that had approached the sleeping nest to within approximately 4 meters, and then stopped and turned back. The tracker studied the prints for a long time. He told his team one thing. She has something with her that the bear decided not to challenge. The puppy, small, probably trembling, probably terrified, but apparently enough. She had already been extraordinarily lucky once, and they still had no idea where she was. By day 4, the professional teams were quietly shifting priorities. The kind of shift that experienced rescuers understand without discussing openly. It was then that an old woman from the village walked into the command post. A Yakut elder. She had lived beside this forest her entire life. Seen it in every season, at every temperature, in every mood it was capable of expressing. She stood in the doorway and looked at the maps, the colored pins, the radio equipment. She said, "In Yakut, you are looking in the wrong way." She crossed the map and pointed not to a location but to a feature, a river winding through the southern search grid. "The child is following water," she said. Children always follow water, not because they know to, because water makes sound, and sound means something in the quiet. She tapped a bend in the river. But here, the river turns into swamp. The ground becomes soft. Children sink into it without understanding what is happening until it is very bad. The coordinator looked at the map, probability modeling, and considered it unlikely that a 4-year-old could have traveled that far in 4 days. The elder looked at him with a patient, slightly disappointed expression of someone who has watched competent people be confidently wrong. Many times. She has been walking 11 or 12 hours a day. Children that age do not stop when they are afraid. They walk until they cannot walk anymore. You are underestimating how far she has gone. He rerouted 2 full teams to the Southern River Corridor immediately. He later said he isn't sure, even now, why he did it so quickly. The absolute absence of doubt in her voice. I simply believed her. Those teams found the swamp, picked their way around its worst sections, and discovered, pressed into the mud at the edge of solid ground, the tiny prints of a barefoot child. She had been there. She had walked exactly the path the elder described. They had missed her by perhaps 6 hours. Day 6. Rod Ion had been at the command post since the beginning, every morning before anyone arrived. Past midnight when volunteers had gone home to sleep. On day 6, the coordinator sat down with him privately. Long silence. Then Rod Ion said, "I saw her." The coordinator went very still. "When I left the village that morning, I looked back once. I saw Karina at the edge of the yard, watching me go. I thought she was just watching. I thought her grandmother was nearby." He stopped, but she was not in the yard. She was on the path, past the gate. She had already left. He had seen her at a distance on the road and assumed she was in the yard. The difference between those two things, yard versus road, that difference was a difference between a child who had stayed and a child who was already following. If he had registered what he actually saw, rather than what he expected to see, he could have brought her home. He had been carrying this for 6 days. The coordinator didn't say anything useful or appropriate. He just sat with him. Day 9, the dog came back to the village. Most reports described this simply. He returned alone. His direction narrowed the search area. What most reports don't describe is what he looked like. His right forepaw had a deep laceration, not consistent with rough terrain, consistent with a bite, a large animal bite. On his left shoulder, 3 parallel scratch marks matted into his fur. The veterinarian told the coordinator privately, "These wounds look like the dog was in a confrontation with a large predator and got away from it." The coordinator thought immediately about the bear prints on day 2, the prints that approached to within 4 meters and then retreated. A possibility began forming in his mind, one he didn't want to fully think through. Had the predator come back? Had the small, untrained puppy somehow held something off that should have killed them both? And then, injured, unable to continue, had he made a choice? Left her, run home, brought people. "I have worked search and rescue for 19 years, the coordinator later said. What that animal apparently did, injured, exhausted, in a forest he had never navigated alone. I still don't have a rational explanation for it. They now knew a radius, a direction, and they knew that whatever had happened out there, the dog had survived it and walked home, which meant possibly she had too. Day 11, late afternoon. A team of 6 searchers was moving through dense grass near a river bend, exactly the terrain the elder had described. Team lead, Sergei, 14 years in emergency services. After 2 hours, no result. Light fading. Team fatigued. Grid square covered. We moved to Sector 7. The team began to orient. One searcher didn't move. Anya, a young volunteer, her first extended search operation. She stood still. Sergei, hold on. She stood at the edge of the last search section, head tilted, in the posture of someone trying to hear something beneath other sounds. "There is something here," she said, almost apologetically, like she wasn't sure she should be saying it. Sergei walked back, stood beside her, listened. Wind, the river, insects, rustling grass, and then, barely audible beneath All of it. Something that could have been a small animal, or it could have been a child. They parted the grass by hand. 3 minutes later, they found her. Karina was curled on her side, on a flattened nest of grass, unconscious or very close to it, but breathing. The next team assigned to that area was scheduled for the following morning. Overnight temperatures were predicted to drop significantly. One more night, without the dog, in that condition. Sergei has said he does not like to complete that thought. At the hospital in Yakutsk, mild hypothermia, severe dehydration, skin infections across nearly her entire body from 11 days of mosquito bites untreated. Weight loss significant enough that her parents barely recognized her face. But alive. By the third day, a doctor sat with her. Karina was quiet for a while. Then she said something that has never quite left anyone who heard it. When the dog left, I was very sad. I thought he was gone like Papa was gone. The doctor asked carefully, did she understand now why the dog had left? Karina considered this with the total seriousness that 4-year-olds bring to important questions. He went to get the people, like I should have done, but I didn't know the way. She paused. He knew the way, so he went. The doctor asked, was she frightened, alone after the dog left? Very frightened, but I stayed in the nest, because that's where he knew I was. I didn't want to move, and then he wouldn't be able to find me again with the people. She had been alone for 2 days, in the Siberian forest, frightened, injured, fading, and she had stayed still deliberately because she trusted the dog to come back with help, in her 4-year-old way, without language for it, without any framework for it. She had been part of her own rescue. She was discharged 2 weeks later. The dog recovered fully, returned to Karina, resumed his role as her constant shadow. In Yakutsk, a bronze statue was commissioned, a girl and her dog, standing together in the posture of 2 beings who had been somewhere very difficult and come back from it. The elder who redirected the search was never formally credited in any official report. The coordinator made sure she knew personally that her judgment had been correct. She received this with the unsurprised nod of someone who already knew. Anya was asked, in a later interview, what made her stop that afternoon. She thought for a long time. Something felt unfinished about that place. I've tried to explain it better. I can't strip away everything. And what remains is this. A 4-year-old who understood, in her own way, that the best thing she'd do was hold still and trust. A dog that fought something, injured and alone, to protect a child who couldn't protect herself. At every single turn, this story almost went the other way. It didn't. And in that gap, between almost and didn't, lives whatever it is that makes a story worth carrying. This one is worth carrying. If it stayed with you, you already know what to do.